Hi guys, I have this slide deck that I have created, and with the help of this I'm going to teach you C++ STL in this video. And from my years of experience I can tell you that this will be the quickest way in which you can learn STL, because I have omitted everything that is not so useful, and I have included everything that is useful for a beginner. So in C++ there is STL, which is like a weapons pack or toolkit of C++. So like if you're playing some game like PUBG, and you do not have the best weapons, so you cannot play well. So STL is like that kind of weapons pack for C++. So if you're going to do anything in C++, you need to have STL with you. And yeah, so just put these two lines in the top of your code, and then all the STL containers and functions will be imported, and then you can use them. So let's get right into this lecture, and subscribe to my channel to get more content on topics like this. And please leave a like on this video, because uh, these likes and views and subscribers are the only thing that keep me motivated, and I have a target of hitting 100,000 subscribers. Okay, so I'm Utkush Gupta. I'm an upcoming Google SDE, and I'm one of the best competitive programmers in India. So you can see from these ranks that I have a consistent performance in a lot of different competitive programming contests, and I'm among top 3 or 5 in India currently, among current active ones. So okay, by the way, the link to this presentation is available in the uh, in the description of this video, so you can check that out, and you can use this presentation uh, to revise these concepts. But I would recommend you to learn from this video only, because I will be telling some extra things also that are not in this presentation while I'm teaching. So at first you should learn from this video, and after that you can use the presentation for reference or revision. Okay, so before learning STL, let's see what are the benefits of STL. So STL, using STL, you can write shorter code that runs faster. So if you try to do the same things without STL, you'll have to write a lot of code, and that code will be slower. So we don't want that. We want to write faster code, and we don't want to write that much. And the pre-written codes in STL are extremely error-free and optimized. So if you write the same thing on your own, there's a good chance that you might make some mistake. But if you're using STL, there's no chance of that. And as you study advanced concepts, STL will be very important. So when you study like vector, or when you study graphs, then for adjacency list you will be using vectors, and for Dijkstra's algorithm there are pairs and sets. Those are also used in the prim algorithm and in a lot of other places. So uh, these STL containers and some algorithms will be used in a lot of different places. So it's best if you learn them properly, because it will be really hard in the future if you don't know these concepts, because these are the fundamentals. Okay, so let's start with the vector. So vector is a dynamic sized array. So dynamic sized array, right. So what is an array? An array looks something like this. You have an array of some elements, but the problem with array is that once you define an array, its size is fixed. So if I say int a4, then there are only 4 elements in this array, and we cannot increase or decrease this. So that gets changed with a vector. So in a vector, the number of elements can be increased or decreased depending upon these functions that are provided along with the vector. So first of all, let's see how we can define a vector. So these are the 3 ways to define a vector. We can have vector int v, which will define an empty vector. Vector int v10 will define a vector with 10 elements, but all of them will be 0. And this will define a vector with the everything. There will be 10 elements, and all of them will be equal to the character h. And here you can see that the data type of this vector is character. That means there are 10 elements and all of them are characters. So let's go to the Sublime, and let's see in action how this is working. So let's say if we have vector int v, so in this way we have an empty vector. Now we can insert some elements into this, like v dot pushback, So in this way, we can insert an element into this, like 5. So now earlier the vector was empty. Now there is an element in it, that is 5. And similarly, we can put a few more elements. We can have 5, 6, and 3. Okay. So now we can even print these elements, and we can use it just like an array, right? So V0, V1, and here you go, V2. So the 3 elements that are there, we can print all 3 of them like this, and there you go. Okay, we can even erase some of the elements. So we can erase an element from the last index, right? So we can do something like v dot pop back, and what this will do is this will erase the last element, and the size of the vector will get decreased. So we can push another element after that. Once we have erased that one, so we can push another element, and now if we see the result, you can see that okay, I should have left a line here for you to understand the difference. Okay, right, so you can see that earlier the answers were 5, 6, 3, but now these are 5, 6, 0, because now I have removed the last element and I have inserted 0 instead. So that's how we can insert an element to the end, or we can remove the last element like this. And the size of the vector keeps on changing. So I can show you the size of the vector. So if I print, let's comment these out now because these are not required for now. So if I print the size of the vector here, that is v dot size, it will be 3. And if I print it here, it will be 2. And if I print it here, it will be 3 again. So the expected output here is 2, 3, 2. Sorry, 3, 2, 3. Yeah. Yeah. So here we have 3 elements. Here we have 2 elements, and here we have again 3 elements because we removed an element here. Right. So that's how the vector, like this is a dynamic array. You can insert the elements at the end, or you can remove some elements on the end, and the size will keep on changing. You can get the size also. And let's see what else is here. So there's another function called v.clear. So what this will do is it will clear the entire vector. So to clear the vector, you can just use v.clear. Let's use it. So once you use v.clear, then the size will again reset to 0. Okay, so these are the things that are there. And when we write vector int v, the vector that is defined is empty. So if we print the size of this, it will be empty. Now, if we use it like, if we declare it like this, vector v50, so now the size will be 50 and all the elements will be 0. So all the elements in this vector are 0 now. Okay, but if we don't want all the elements to be 0, we can tell it the initial element that we want. So now all the elements will be 7 instead. So the vector will look like this. Again, it will have 50 elements, but all of them will be 7. So let's print the first element, for example, and it's going to be 7. Or let's say we print an element from the middle, and it will definitely be 7. All of these elements are 7. And yeah, so that's how we can declare a vector. And make sure that when you're declaring a vector of size 50, for example, make sure you use parentheses, the rounded brackets, and not the square brackets. Because when we do this, this is something else, right? So this is not a vector of 50 elements. This is an array of 50 vectors, right? So this is an array of 50 vectors, and that's not what we were trying to do. This is also, like, this also might be useful somewhere, but not here. So I mean, there are places where this is useful, but that is out of scope of discussion today. But yeah, so that's not what we want. We want a single vector with 50 elements. So that's how that is done. Okay. So yeah, so this was about the vectors. Now let's see what is the importance of vectors. Why should we care about vectors? So there are a lot of different use cases. In the beginning, I talked about the adjacency list in graph, but like obviously this is too advanced for beginners. So here's an easy example. Try out this problem. You are given n numbers in input. So you are given n and then n numbers in the next line. and you want to print two lines. So in the first line, you want to print all the even integers in sorted order, and in the second line, you want to print all the odd integers in sorted order. So this would look something like this. Let's say you are given 6 elements in input, and the elements are like 3, 2, 5, 3, 1, and 4, right? So what you want to do is, first you want to print 2, 4, and in the next line you want to print 1, 3, 3, 5. Okay. So how will you do this? So to do this, if you do it without vectors, like first you will have to count how many even elements are there, how many odd elements are there, and then you will define two arrays and then put them there and sort them, and then sort them together. So you will have to do all this stuff, but with this it is easier. So here what we're doing is, we will just make two vectors. So we will have a vector int for even and another vector int for odd. So all the even elements, we will push them back into the even vector, and all the odd elements, we will push them back into the odd vector, and then we will just treat them like normal arrays. So we can sort both of them and print them. Right. So this is one use case of vector where, and as I've said, that it can be done without vectors also, but it is easier with vectors. Although there are other places where using the vectors is much better than using arrays. So since it is not that trivial, I cannot explain it here, but you need to know that this will be really important later. Okay, now let's talk about a function instead of a container. So vector was a container, it was a container in which you can contain elements, but now we are talking about a function. This is also present in STL. So this is the sort function. So using the sort function, we can sort an array or a vector or a string. So the underlying sorting algorithm is GCC sort, and it is a hybrid algorithm. It uses, it is a mixture of three algorithms actually: quick sort, insertion sort, and heap sort. So mixing all of them together, it is a very, very efficient way of sorting, and it is already implemented in STL. So we can just use it directly, and it is O of n login in runtime. So if you write any other sort, it will be slower than this GCC sort. So like whenever you want to sort some elements, it is best to use this sort function. Okay, so sorry, yeah, this was a slide. Yeah, so here I have told you the usage. If you want to sort an array, you give the pointer of the first element and the pointer of the element after the last element. Okay, so if there are n elements, you know that a is the pointer to the first element, and a plus n is the pointer to the element that comes after the last element, right? So let me just wait a second. Yeah, so let me just tell you here what we're doing. So when we write the sort function for an array, so we write the pointer to the first element. So we write the pointer to first element followed by pointer to last element plus 1. Right? So this part is really important, that we want the pointer of the element that is on the next of the last element that we want to sort. Like the range that we want to sort, this is the next element. So if we have an array like this, and it has like 4 elements, so we will give it the pointer of this element and the pointer of this empty place that is not a part of the array, right? And in case, let's say we don't want to sort the entire array, although this is not usually used, but if we don't want to sort the entire array, let's say if we have 4 elements like this, and we just want to sort these 3 elements, and this one we want to leave untouched. So what we will do is, we will do sort a comma a plus 3, right? So that means this element and this element we are giving, so only these 3 will be sorted. So the result will be like 1, 4, 5 and 2. So let's try this out, so that let's write the code here and see what will happen here. So we have an array of 4 elements, and the elements are 5, 4, 1, 2. Okay, and what will happen if we sort the first 3 only? Okay, like this. And now let's print all the 4 elements. leave a space here. Okay, so as I said, we get 1452. So what you want to do is you want to give it the pointer of the element that is on the right of the last element. So then the entire array will be sorted. So that's how you sort an array using the sort function. But if you're using vectors or strings, then you will have to give it iterators. So these things, the v dot begin and v dot end, these are called iterators, and we will discuss them later in this video and in these slide deck in these slides. So they are a little bit similar to the pointers only. V dot begin is like the iterator to the first element, and v dot end is the iterator to the element that is on the right of the last element. So for now, we can just understand that if we write like this, we can sort a vector. So let's say if we have a vector v like this. So again, it has 4 elements. So you can define a vector like this also if you know the elements already. So now what we can do is to sort it, we can just say sort from v dot begin till v dot end. Okay, and yeah, let's print vi. So again, we will get the same result. Yeah, exactly. So these v dot begin and v dot end are iterators. We'll talk about it later in this video. Okay, so now let's talk about pair. So pair is a way of creating a composite data type that is composed of 2 different primitive or composite data types, right? So like let's say if I want a data type that is composed of 2 integers, so I can keep it like pair int int, and it is a pair of 2 integers. Now this is a data type that contains 2 integers, and here I have pair int string. So I have a data type that contains an int and a string. And here, for example, you can see pair string int I have. That means I have a string and also an integer, and the value I can store it like this: hello comma 6. So I have 2 values in a single variable. So when can this be advantageous? So the main advantage is in the next slide. But in case you have a function and you want to return multiple values from that, so you know that in C++ you can return only a single value from a function. So in that case, these pairs can be useful, because let's say if there's a function and you want to return a string and an integer, both of these things, if you want to return from a function, then what you can do is, instead of returning both of them, which is not possible, you can return a pair of string and int, so that you can return both of these values. And if you want to access the individual components of this composite data type, you can use dot first and dot second. So like if p equals hello comma 6, we can get the first element by writing p dot first, and if we write p dot second, we can get the second element. And the 2 data types that are here, they don't have to be primitive, even they can be composite. So you can see here that I have a pair of integer comma string. So this pair of integer comma string is a composite data type, and this composite data type has the first as an integer, and the second one is a composite data type in itself. So you can even nest them, and you can nest them to any level. So you can have pair of int, comma pair of int, comma pair of int, and so on. So you can have a lot of elements in a single data type like this. So and even vectors are considered composite data types. So even they can be here, and even if you write something very, very complex, like probably that won't be useful, but that will be correct. So you can have a pair of vector of pair of integer comma string like this, and yeah. So if you have a data type like this, it is not much useful, but it will still work. So no matter how much complexity you increase, no matter how much you nest them, it is still correct, right? So in this way, you can define them like this, and there's not much here. So you can access the first value and the second value separately like this. You can even modify them like that. So let's say I have a pair of int comma string p, and the value is, let's say, 4 comma Utkarsh is my name. So if we have this, then we can even change the value like this: p dot first equals 17, so it will change the value, and we can print them like this. We can print p dot first and we can leave a space and then p dot second like this. So it should print 17 and space and Utkarsh. Yeah, so it's working as expected. And as I said that this is useful if you want to return multiple values from a function. So it can return multiple values from a function like this. So in this way it is useful. Like in some cases you want a single function to maybe give you both the, like when you divide two numbers you have quotient and the remainder. So in this way a single function can give you both of them, and there can be a lot of other cases where you might need two different values as the return value. Okay, now we have sorting arrays or vectors of pairs. So now this is the main use case of pairs. Like as far as I know, this is the main case where pairs are used, because when you sort the pairs, they behave in a very interesting way. So let's say if I have a pair of an array of 5 pairs, right? So I have an array of 5 pairs here, and I have assigned the values. Okay, so p0 is 1 comma 2, p1 is 5 comma 2, 8 comma 1, and then 1 comma 0, and finally 3 comma 4. So if we sort this array, so we just studied the sort function. So if we want to sort this entire array, we will give the pointer to the first element and the pointer to the last element. So when we sort this, the new array will look like this. So 1 comma 0, then 1 comma 2, 3 comma 4, 5 comma 2, and 8 comma 1. So what is the rule that is being followed? So the rule that is being followed is that first it sorts all the elements in increasing order of the first value, right? So if we take the first value from each of the pairs, you can see that it is 1 1 3 5 8. So it is sorted according to the first element. But if in case in two elements the first value is equal, then what will it do? Then it will break the ties on the basis of the second value. So here you can see that 1 0 comes before 1 2 because 0 is smaller than 2. So the comparison is something like this. So if the first is unequal, then the comparison is done by first. But if they are equal, then like if a dot first is equal to the b dot first, then in this case the comparison is done on the basis of second. So yeah, so that's what's happening here. So basically normally the comparison is done on the basis of first, but if there is a tie, then it is done on the basis of second. Now let's look at this question. Now let's say you are given a list of names of students and also their scores. So what you want to do is you want to print the names of students in decreasing order of scores. So how will we do this? So it is easy. We will just say we will make a pair of int comma string, and then we can make the array of this. So we can make an array of this with as many elements as we want, or we can even make a vector of this. So we can make a vector of this. Okay, so vector of pair int string, we can have it like that, and then we can insert all the elements that we want, and we can populate the vector. And after doing all that, what we can do is we can just like this int comma string means the score comma the names. Okay, so what we can do is now we can just sort it like this. Sort v dot begin comma v dot end like this. So we saw in the previous slide that we use iterators to sort vectors like this, and then all the scores will be sorted in increasing order, and the names will stick together with them, right? So the person with the minimum score will go on the first position, and his name will be also there. So in this way we can get the sorted version of score comma names, and we can if we want to print it in decreasing order, because that will be like the rank list. So what we can do is we can iterate over the vector in the reverse order, and when we iterate in reverse order, what we will do is we will right So we will iterate in reverse order and we will just print the names, right? So we won't print the scores because as you can see in the problem, we just want the names of the students in decreasing order of scores. Am I blocking this scores? I don't know. Okay. Now let's talk about iterators. So earlier I said that we will talk about iterators later, and now we're here. Okay. So I have told this earlier also that v dot end is the iterator to a non-existent element, which is after the last element. So just like a plus n in an array of size n is a pointer to the element that comes after the last element. Similarly, v dot end is the iterator to a non-existent element, the element that comes after the last element. Okay. So let's say, so as I said, the iterators behave a lot like pointers. So I have done a comparison of iterators and pointers, right? So here on the left side we have iterators, and on the right side we have pointers, and you can see that most of the things are working in a similar way. So I have a vector of 5 elements and I have an array of 5 elements. Now v dot begin will give me the first the iterator to the first element, and int star p equals a will give me the pointer to the first element. Okay, and instead of writing this whole thing vector int iterator, you can just use auto. So auto is a keyword that will deduce the data type automatically. So the data type of it will become the data type of this v dot begin. So this is actually this thing vector int iterator. So normally you can always use this auto, and I have just written it for the last time here, and you will never use it. I'm just telling you that this is the actual data type, but you can just use auto all the time. Okay, so auto it equals v dot begin, and here we have the pointer p equals a. Okay, so now if we dereference the pointer, if we print star p, we get 10, which is the first element, and star it also gives the 10, that is the first element. Now if we do it plus plus or p plus plus, we can get the iterator or the pointer to the next element. This will print 15. And if we do it minus minus, we again go back to the first element. So again it's printing 10 both times. And just like how you can add some value to pointers, we can do p plus 3. So similarly we can do it plus 3 also. So this element plus 3, we get to the fourth element in both the array and the vector, and we print 5 both times. So that's how iterators work in general. And so that's how iterators work for vectors. There are a few other things, but those are not too relevant for beginners, so I have left them out. But yeah, so this is the basic idea. Okay, now let's talk about another container, set. I'm going to take a break and I'll be back very soon. Okay, hi. So now let's talk about set. Set is the container which keeps a unique copy of every element in a sorted order. So all the elements that are there in a set, they will be in a sorted order, and only unique copies will be kept. So we can erase and insert any element, and all of these operations work in login time. So what happens is, if the element is already present and if you insert it again, then nothing happens. And if you erase an element and if it is not present, then nothing happens. So only a unique copy is kept inside a set, and s.count will tell you whether the element is present in the set or not. Normally count is supposed to give you the frequency of that element, but since in set everything is unique, so it can either be 1 or 0. So it's a good way of knowing whether the element is present in the set or not. Then s.clear and s.size do the same thing, erase all elements, just like in vector. And this is the way to define a set. So we can make a set of int, we can make a set of string, or we can make a set of any composite data type. So we can have a set of pair int string, or pair int comma vector string, or whatever. So we can have a set of any data type, and these are the main functions which are used with sets. So okay, so let's see in action how sets work. So we have a set of integer s. Now let's say I have s dot insert 10 and s dot insert 15. Okay, now let's say I print s dot count 10. So this should print 1 because 10 is present in this set. Okay, so 10 is present in the set, that's why this prints 10. This prints 1. Okay, and 9 is not present, so this will print 0. 11 is also not present, but 15 is present, so this will print 1, and so on. So let's see what happens now. So I get 1001 just as I expected. But what if I erase some element? So let's say I erase s dot erase 10, and now if I print s dot count 10, let's see what will happen. So this time it should give us 0 because that element has been erased, and uh, the count always stays 1. So even if we insert a number multiple times, it does not matter, the count will be 1, and if we erase it only once, it will be gone. So no matter how many times you insert an element, once you erase it, it's gone. But if you insert it again, then it will be back. Okay, so just because we inserted it again, so now it is back. So in general, that's how sets work. One property I haven't demonstrated yet is that all the elements in a set are always in sorted order. So that is one thing that I'm going to demonstrate when I tell you about iterators. Okay, so yeah, and this thing is wrong. So you cannot access the elements of a set using the square bracket operator. So random access is not allowed with sets. You cannot access the third element directly like this. So this is not allowed. So you have to use iterators to access the elements. Now for these we have set iterators, and again we have set s dot begin and s dot end, where s dot begin is the iterator to the first element, s dot end is the iterator to a non-existent element which is after the last element. Okay, now these four things will work here also. You can increase the iterator, you can decrease it, prefix postfix both are there, but all of these work in O of log n time. So these do not work in O of n time, these work in O of log n time. So why is log n everywhere? That's basically because we like inside the set, it is implemented in a very complex way. It actually uses a special data structure called red and black trees, which are like, you don't need to care about those right now, but it's a very complex data structure, and it does a lot of things to always keep all the elements sorted and unique, and it works in O of log n time. So even the element access, it cannot be done in a constant time. So if you want to get the smallest element, even that has to be done in O of log n time, or any element if you want to get, it will be in O of log n time. So even here you can see that insert, erase and count, all of them work in log n time. Okay, and these things like it plus 5 or it plus equal to 2, these are all invalid. To advance multiple steps, you have to do it plus plus multiple times, and if you do it 5 times, it will take 5 log n time, right? So that's why it is not allowed to. Yeah, okay. Now there are some functions that are related to iterators. You have find, lower bound and upper bound. So lower bound and upper bound are not are a little more complex, so I'm not going to talk about them. You can read them here. But the find will return the iterator to an element, whichever like you give the argument x, and it will return the iterator to the element with value x. But if the element is not found in the set, then it will return s dot end, because as I said, s dot end is the iterator to a non-existent element, so it will just give you the non-existent element. We'll see how this will be useful later. And s dot sorry, this should be s dot erase. Okay, good, I found the mistake here. Okay, yeah, so you can erase an element using the iterator also. So if I do s dot erase it will erase the element with the iterator it. So let's say if I want to erase the smallest element from the set, I can just write s dot erase. So I can just write s dot erase s dot begin, right? So let's insert some elements. If I insert 4, then I can again insert 1, then I can insert 10, and let's say 3, and so on. So it doesn't matter in which order I insert them. the s dot begin will always point to this 1, right? So let's say we print that the out star s dot begin. So this will print the value of the smallest element in the set. So what will happen? We will get 1 because 1 is the smallest element in the set. But what will happen if I erase 1 from the set? So we can do s dot erase s dot begin. So this will erase the smallest element from the set. So 1 has been erased. So the next smallest element is printed, which is 3. So as you can see that a set always keeps the elements in sorted order. Does not matter in which order you insert them or erase them. At every single moment, all the elements in a set will always be in sorted order. So now if I also insert -1, the smallest element will be -1 and you will get -1 as output. So yeah, so order of inserting or erasing does not matter. All the elements that are currently present in a set, they will always be in a sorted order. And later I will show you how to iterate through an entire set, and then we can even see the values that are there. So let's get back to the slides. And yeah, so both of these lines are the same. S dot 5 and 10 equals s dot n. That means 10 is not found. So you can print not found. And if the count is 0, then also it is not found. Okay. So now we have a data structure called, we have a container called map that is present in the STL. And you can think of it like a very special array in which the indices of the elements can be negative or very big, or they can even be strings, right? So these indices are actually called keys. And normally if you have an array of n elements, then the keys have to be between 0 till n minus 1. But in map, the keys can be anything, and they can even be arrays or even vectors or pairs, or anything can be a key. So any data type, that's how you define a map. You have a map of key data type comma value data type. So here I have a map of string comma int. So what's happening is that I have a special type of array in which you can see I am even using it like an array. So I have a special type of array in which the keys are the strings. So m of hello equals 50, m of word equals 12, and so on. And I can even print them like this. So one of the most common use cases of a map is to count the frequency of various objects. So if I want to store the frequency of a certain object, then this can be very useful. So I'm even going to show you a problem that is there in these slides. So yeah, so this one. So this is a very good problem for map. In this problem, what's happening is that this is a registration system, and you have a lot of names of people who try to register. So if the name appears for the first time, you can just assign that name to that person and say okay. But if that name is a duplicate, so you will append 1 to it, and then if it appears more number of times, you have to append 2 and 3 and 4 and so on. So it's kind of like if you already have a file, and if you download it again, it appends 1 there, and next time it appends 2 and 3 and so on. So something like that we have to do here. And yeah, so that's what we want to do. And it is quite obvious from this problem that what we want to do here is we want to store the frequency of the string. Like we want to know how many times a certain string has appeared, because then only will we be able to append the correct number after the string, right? So if the frequency is 0, then we can just print okay and increase the frequency by 1. And then next time, if the frequency is non-zero, we will print the string and append that number and increase the frequency again. So that's what we want to do. And I think after I finish the slides, I will even write the code to show how this works. I will submit this problem in this video. Okay, let's get back to this. Yeah, so even negative integers are also valid keys. So if you make a map of integer comma integer, where the key data type and value data type both are integers, so even the negative integers are also valid as keys. And one thing you need to note is that maps are very similar to sets. So in sets, the values are unique and sorted. In the maps also, the keys are unique and sorted. So whatever keys are there, like hello and word, so these will be present in a sorted order inside the map, uh, in lexicographically increasing order. Okay, so hello will be before word. Okay, so since these are very similar to set, again all operations work in O of login time. Even if you try to access a key, it works in O of login time. So normally if you access an element from an array, then that works in O of 1 time. But if you access an element in a map, then that works in O of login time. So m dot clear clears a map, and all of these functions, the count, find, erase, upper bound, lower bound, these are similar to set. So you can read about them in the page with the set. And like these, like a lot of these return iterator, return an iterator, and the map iterators also behave very similar to sets, but the only difference is that when you try to dereference the iterator, like when you try to use the star operator, instead of getting the key, you get a pair of key comma value. So here I've shown you an example what's exactly happening here. So let's say if I have a map of string comma double, so the key is string and the value is double. And let's say if I insert some values here, and I will try to find the iterator of the element with the key Utkarsh. Okay, so now when I dereference this thing, I will get the key comma value. So this thing I can store in a pair like this. And let's say if I only want the second from this iterator, so I will first have to dereference it and then choose the second like this, star it dot second. So there is a shorthand for this. Instead of writing this whole thing, you can just write it a second. So this works for pointers also, this works for iterators also. Let's try to see some examples of maps and things like that. So okay, so let's say if I have a map of int comma int m. Okay, so now let's say if some element is not present in the map, what will happen? So let's say if I just directly try to print m15 and that is not even present in the map, what it will do is it will instantly create the element, and the size will be 0 and the value will be 0. Okay, so you can see that when the element was not present, and if I try to print it, the result that I get is 0. And now the size of the map also increases. So now if I try to print the size of the map, instead of 0, it will be 1, right? So let's say if I try to print the size of the map here, so here it will be 0 because there is no element in the map. But if I try to print the size of the map here, it will be 1 because when I try to access the element 15, it is created in that, right? So that's why I get the size is 1. And if I try to access a few more elements, then they will also be created. And the values will be assigned to 0. Okay. Yeah. So now we have 3 elements here. But we can directly assign whichever value we want to them. Like we can assign whichever value we want to, we can assign that value to them. And we can directly print it. And it will work. Okay, so you see, if I print m10, it is 4 because I had assigned 4 here. So this is why these are very good for frequency, for storing frequency of anything. This is very good. And let's say frequency of 10 plus plus, and I do it 4 times. So at the end, if I want to print the frequency of any element, let's say if I want the frequency of 10 and I also want the frequency of 4, so I will get 4,0 because 10 has appeared 4 times and 4 hasn't appeared, so it is 10,0. But if frequency of 4 plus plus also I do somewhere, then it will be 4,1. So this is why these are very good for counting the frequency of elements. And that's exactly what we had to do in this problem registration system. So now let's try this problem out. So in this problem, what we're going to do is we will first make a map of frequency only. So string comma int, right? So we want to store the frequency of the strings like this. So we make a map of frequency like this. And now I have the integer n. These are the lines of input. And let's run a loop for n times. Every time I will take a string s as input. Okay. Now, if the frequency is 0, if the frequency of s equals 0, then I can just see out okay. Otherwise, I will see out the s and followed by the frequency of s. Okay, like this. And yeah, so finally I have to increase the frequency of s. Okay, like this. And this should work. So let's see if it's working. Okay, just a minute. Yeah. Didn't leave a line here. And frequency plus plus. Okay. So yeah, so the output is exactly what we wanted for the first test case, and let's try for the second test case also. Okay, again, exactly what we wanted, so we can submit it now. Let's see if it works. Okay, it works. So yeah, so that's how we can use map. That is one way of using maps. There can be a lot of other use cases as well. So I have given you some practice problems. In those problems, you will get to know some other use cases also. But yeah, now let's talk about iterating the containers. So one way of iterating the container is to use iterators. So we can start with auto it equals s dot begin, it not equals s dot end, and it plus plus, right? So this starts with the iterator of the first element, and we can use the element using star it, and the iterator will keep on increasing by 1 every time, and this will keep on happening until it is not equal to s dot n. And this works because s dot end is the iterator to a non-existing element, right? So whenever it becomes equal to s dot n, that means we are at the end of the set or vector or map, and we don't have to continue the loop anymore. So yeah, so that's how we can iterate a container, and it works for all three. So it works for set, map, and vector, all three of them. And there's a shorthand also. So what you can do is you can just write it like this. So this is like a for each loop in C++. For each x in V, we can do it like this. For each x in S, we can do it like this. And since the values in the map are stored as pairs of key comma value, instead of getting just ints, we have to put pair int here like this. And if it's like a map of string comma int, then we will put pair string int here, and then we can access the individual elements like this: x dot first, x dot second. So now that we know how to iterate a set, let's see if it keeps unique values or not. So let's say if I have a set int s, and let's take an integer n as input, and now let's just input n integers now. Okay, and s dot insert x. Finally, what we want to do is we want to print all the elements in this set. So for int x in s, cout x and leave a space. Okay, so let's see what will happen. Okay, so let's say I want to work with 7 elements. Okay, so I have 7, 4, 4, 2, 6, 7, 1, 7 done now. Okay, right. Now when I print it, you can see that all the duplicates have been removed, and all the elements that are there, they are in increasing order. Now if I remove one of these elements, then also everything will remain in increasing order. So at every step, all the elements stay in increasing order. So that is the powerful thing about a set. And yeah, so here are some practice problems that you can try. Some of them are really easy. You can try all of them. And apart from that, I also would advise you to keep practicing Codeforce's problems. Usually A problems do not require STL, but the B and C problems often require to use at least some sort of containers or functions. So just keep practicing and you'll get really good at these. Now these are the references that you can take. So let's say if you want to know more about vectors, because all I told you is not everything that is there are other things as well, although those are not used often. But still, if you want to read about these, this is the best site to read about it. This is the C++ reference, and here you can read about any function that is there. So just like there are begin and end, there are also r begin and r end, which are the reverse iterators. So you can click on any of them and you can see an example in action, what is exactly happening with them, right? So yeah, and it tells you everything about the time complexity and everything. These are some more advanced things that you probably don't care about. Okay, so in this way you can learn about, not learn about, but you can use it like a glossary. So if you want to know more about sets or maps or anything, I have given you the links. And if there is any other container that you want to learn about, that also you can do. And there are 3 more slides, but these are not for beginners. This is some a little bit advanced level of stuff. So I'll talk about it in just a few minutes, not too much into in the detail, but before that I want to talk about one good example in which you can use sets, right? So one good way of using sets is that, let's say you have a problem. So this is a very good problem, and let's say you have a shop. Okay, so you have a shop, and in this shop there are a lot of objects. Okay, so a lot of objects are being sold in this shop. So each object has the name of the object. Okay, so the name of some object, like it can be a ball, it can be like a cup or anything, and then it has a price. Okay, so each object has a name and a price. Okay, now these objects can keep on getting restocked, right? So at any step, maybe you get a new object and you want to place it in your shop. And also one thing can happen is some miser customer can come. Miser means conjuice. So if some miser customer comes to your shop, he will just buy the cheapest object that is present. He does not care what that object is. He will just buy the cheapest object. So you will take the cheapest object and you will sell it to that person. So and they can only be one occurrence of any object at a time, right? So let's say that is given, like you only keep one occurrence of every object at a time. So what you can do is, in this problem, what you can do is you can make a set of pair of int comma string. Okay, so you can make a set of pair of int comma string. So why are we doing this? So when we do this, a set of pair of int comma string, in this pair of int comma string, this int will be the price, and this string will be the name of the object. And since everything is always sorted in a set, what will happen is the s.begin will always give you the cheapest object. So now it is very easy to do this thing. All the objects that you have, whenever any object gets restocked, or whenever any new object appears, you can just insert it into the set like this, s.insert, and just insert the object like this into the set. And whenever the miser customer comes, just take s.begin, give that object to that person, and then erase it from the set. So in this way you can solve this problem very easily. And yeah, so that is one way to demonstrate the power of sets. There are a lot of other use cases that you will get to know as you keep on advancing in competitive programming or in DSA or anything. So best of luck for that. But now let me cover some of the advanced things. So this is more like a future work. If you're a beginner, you do not really care about these things. But there's a thing called custom comparator. So what you can do is, when you sort, it sorts things in increasing order, but you can define your own custom rule, and as long as that rule is correct, you can just make a function of that rule and then pass it to the function. pass it to the sort function, and then it will sort it according to that rule. So here I have explained a little bit about how it works, and I have also given you a link where you can read more about comparators, and I have given you an exercise. But as I said, unless you have a good grasp of STL and C++, this does not matter to you. So this is there, but this exercise is there. If you are good at STL already, you should try it out. And for further study also, this is also not very relevant to beginners, but there are some other containers also, so you can read about these as well. There is Q. I think Q is not that less commonly used. So I think at some time you will have to use Q, because Q is used in BFS, which is a graph algorithm. I'll teach that also later. And then stack queue, deck is the doubly ended queue. And then there is priority queue. So all these things are not that commonly used, but if you want, you can learn about these as well. And there are just like there are sets and maps, there are multi-set and multi-maps also, which can store duplicates as well. So it's a little complex for beginners, because this is usually not required. Sometimes it can be required, but there are some kind of workarounds that you can figure out on your own. I won't say like I don't want to confuse you with these things right now. But as you get time and as you keep on getting better on STL, you can read about these as well. And how will you read about these? Just like I told you here, just Google C++ space multi-set, and then you will get a result from c++.com. From there you can learn about multi-sets and multi-maps. It will tell you everything about the time complexity. It will give you examples of how to use various functions and everything. And then also there are ordered set and ordered map. So this is like similar to hash set or hash map in Java, if you are familiar with them. But these are not reliable. So there are a lot of things about these. I don't want to talk about them, but I would say beginners should always avoid them. So you should always avoid using unordered set and unordered map unless you're very sure about how these works, and unless you're sure about how the hashing works, how the collisions work. I would not advise you to use these unordered set and unordered maps in competitive programming, or while during online assessments, or in LeetCode or anywhere. So thank you for watching, and leave a like on this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel, because I will be making this type of content for most of the topics that are there. And thank you for watching, and the link to this presentation is in the description of this video, and I'll see you next time.